All right. Hello, everyone. Today I am going to try to add Quart-Schema support to my Quart apps. So if you don't know, Quart is a Python framework and it's based off of Flask. It actually builds on Flask now. But the important thing about Quart is that it does have support for asynchronous code. And that's really crucial when you're writing apps that use large language models, because the calls to the large language model can be quite slow and you want to be able to do other stuff while you're waiting for the results from that network call. So I have several apps that do use Quart, and I'm going to see which of them I can port over to having Quart-Schema support. So this is one example here. This is a really simple app with OpenAI, just chatting, just the kind of things you'd ask ChatGPT. And then this one is an app that chats on top of data using the RAG approach, retrieval augmented generation. So I thought we'd start with the simpler one and then see how that goes. So let's see, let me reload this, make sure it's still working. Open up the network tab so we can see what the API looks like in terms of the network tab. So what do I need today? I need a princess poem for a 4-year-old. It's quite good at poetry. So we can see that a request went out to /chat, and it had a payload, which just was a dictionary with message, and then the response. And this is a streaming response. So that's going to be really interesting to figure out how to document that. I'm actually somewhat, I don't know if is it going to work. We'll see. This is a streamed JSON lines, also known as new line delimited JSON. So we'll see if we can document that. I know it specifically says that on here that there's that WebSockets aren't something that's like formally supported. And I've also looked at the Open API issue tracker about like streaming and JSON lines, and I don't think it's like officially supported, but we'll see what we can do. All right, so here we go. So how do we bring in Quart-Schema? Let's get started. Installation. All right, so we need to install. So the first thing is that we actually have to pick between message spec and pedantic. And apparently this is the first time I was hearing a message spec. It looks pretty cool. I'm going to use pedantic just because the OpenAI Python SDK is built on pedantic, and I'm hoping we can like reuse some of their models. So yeah, we can see that it's their SDK does use pedantic for the typing. So I'm going to bring in pedantic in the hope that we can reuse some models. So let me go and put that as a dependency here. Okay, so we got that, and then, oops, we're going to compile our requirements.txt again. So we're inside source, and I'm going to update the requirements.txt after updating pyproject.toml. So it should bring in Quart-Schema pedantic and any of its dependencies. So let's take a look at the changes. So we see PyHumps. Oh, that's a new one. PyHumps. I think I have to look up and find out what PyHumps is. I assume it's my lovely, no. All right, so convert strings and dictionary keys between snake case, camel case, and Pascal case in Python, inspired by humps for Node. Oh, it's got a camel, of course. Okay. I feel like it's okay. That's great. All right, so we brought in PyHumps. Okay, so it looks like Quart-Schema doesn't have a lot of extra dependencies. We already were bringing in pedantic because of the OpenAI SDK, so I think it's good that we picked that. And we got PyHumps, and we got and we got Quart-Schema itself. All right, so now let's go ahead and I'm gonna reinstall. So I'll just install all the requirements for this container. So I just saw, yeah, it's updating a few things. Okay, I think that's fine. That's from a different issue. And then we're gonna install this app as an editable app. All right. So now we should be able to bring in the Quart-Schema classes. So now let's take a look at the documentation for Quart-Schema. So it says from Quart-Schema, we import all these things. All right. And then we say after we construct the app, then we wrap the app in the Quart-Schema constructor. So I actually use a blueprint in order to make this app. So blueprints is a way of modularizing your app modules. So you can kind of like have a blueprint which has a bunch of routes on it. So I actually construct the app over here. So in fact, we probably want to bring this import into here. So from Quart-Schema imports Quart-Schema, and this is where we construct the app. So that's where I'm going to wrap that in Quart-Schema. Okay, cool. So we've done that. So we can maybe remove that import from here because we're moving that in using that in our init. And then the next step is, well, that we actually need to document what our class is taking. So let's try a little data class. So that's what it shows here. And class chat request, message string. Okay. And the data class that just comes from Python data class. And this is an interesting part. I was looking at the pedantic documentation, and there's apparently multiple ways you can define pedantic data classes, including using data class, but I thought you were supposed to use the wrapper for it. So we'll have to double check whether this is really going to work with pedantic. All right, so we have a data class. Let's see. So the next thing is that we validate the request. So we'll start with just the request, not the response, because that's going to be way harder because we've got that streaming response. So we're going to try validate request. And then it just says to run the application, and it says the docs should be available at /docs or /redocs. Okay, so let's see. Do I still have the app running here? I do, and it's on auto reload, so it might have grabbed the new stuff. We'll find out. Okay, we're gonna try going to /docs. Aha! We do have the docs. Oh, and it added all of the routes actually. So it added the index, it added the static, and it added the chat. Okay. So I think there's a way we can actually exclude things that we don't want to have in the docs, but I can look into that later. So here's the chat. So we can try it out, and it's going to take a message and say, let's just do a haiku about a cat that loves tuna. We're going to execute. All right, and we see the kernel. Aha, and we got a 500. So we're going to go back here. It says chat handler got an unexpected keyword argument data. Okay, so we probably should check to see how we should actually bring in this data here. So got an unexpected argument data. So let's go look back at the quick start. So this one actually defines and says, okay, this is similar to actually how it looks in Fast API. So Quart-Schema is very similar to Fast API, right? They're both a way of defining your request models and your response models and generating documents for it. I just happen to use Quart for these ones. I also have other ones that do use Fast API, but I wanted to try and see what it was like to use Quart-Schema because there's multiple ways that we can generate Swagger documentation. So this should actually be, we should call this, data, say it's a chat request. And so then instead of doing request.json, we should just actually be able to do request message equals data.message. I think so. Do something with data. And let's see. Is that going to work? We'll find out. All right, so let's see. Let's try just executing again. It worked. Cool. All right, so we've got some simple, docs here, and let's see if the validation works, right? So if I send something bad, like, if I don't send a message and I press execute, then, okay, so that time I got back a 400. I thought that we'd also get back maybe like a JSON error, because FastAPI often does like a JSON error, but that might not be what Quart does. So it does send back a 400, which would make sense, is that this was a bad request. I think there's more documentation here about how to do the errors. So they have all these how-to guides, right? So you can see like handling validation errors. Yeah. So by default, if your client sends a body that doesn't satisfy the schema, a 400 bad request response will be sent. You can alter this by adding an error handler here, and that way we'd get back actual JSON, which might be what we would want to do. Let's see, do we send back any error here? So this one actually does potentially give back an error when it has an internal response. So that's a potential response that it could look like. Okay. All right. So now let's try response validation. So that is going to be interesting to see if we can validate the stream. Okay. How are we going to do this? All right. So validate response. And let's see, chat response. And it's going to be a data class. But it's really like a list of, I think I read you could do a list of that. So maybe chat, because what this is, it's actually these chat completion chunks from the OpenAI SDK. So I wonder if we could find their chat completion chunk. Let's see. All right, so class chat completion, this OpenAI types.chat.chat completion chunk. So let's try that from OpenAI.types.chat. And import chat completion chunk. Okay, so what we give back is basically a list of those chunks, but it's not quite a list. It's really a stream. So I don't think it's going to validate it correctly. So let's just read a little bit more about response validation. So, so we say like, okay, the response should look like that. And you can also assert what the errors are going to be. Let's see, it assumes it's going to be 200. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and see if anybody's already asked about this. So I have to figure out what to search for. So what we're really doing is we're doing a stream, which sends transfer encoding chunked. Okay. So I see. Can we add needed? Yeah. What does an OpenAPI schema look like for an SSE route? So SSE is server sent events, and server sent events is like a special version of what I'm doing. So it's true that a uh, server sent events, it hasn't been formally documented what that looks like as an open API schema. But wait, let me look at my fast API version of this. So I've kind of got a similar code in fast API. And for fast API, I would have already had to document the response. You know what I did is I just went ahead and did not validate the response. That's certainly a way to do it. So in the fast API one, I used fast API.responses.streaming response in order to send back the stream. But I don't validate the response. I was hoping I could validate it in order to kind of document what it looks like. All right. Well, let's go ahead and see. So if we have, I'm saying the response is like a list of these chat completion chunks, but it's not truly a list. Let me go ahead and show what it looks like again. Haiku about a cat. Oh, now we're getting a 500. Haha, we're getting a 500 because it's trying to validate the responses. It looks like it doesn't like the response header, and that might be what we just saw. The issue we just saw that it's not accepting our response headers. So that's interesting. So we must be running into some default headers that it expects. So I know that there's headers validation here, request headers, response headers, decorating. Okay, so validate response. So you can say what the headers look like. So I might say here the chat response headers. And in this case, it would be, do we send a content type on this one? We're not particularly sending a content type. Let's see. Response headers content type. Yeah, I'm only sending a text. Okay, it's getting interpreted as text.html, but it should be sending a transfer encoding chunked header. And the other ones are straightforward. So, okay, so we've got that one. And now we're going to see if I can validate that. I think we might be out of luck with validating responses, but I'm going to keep trying what we can do. So it says validate response, got unexpected keyword argument. That's fine. So we just change it to that. So it looks like we've got the body, the code, and the headers. All right, let's give it a go. So right now we're doing response. I think I actually do want to add a content type here. Let me go ahead and look to remember what content type we use in our other chat app, because we figured out that there's some content types work better than others when you're streaming. So the one that we like to do is this one. I think I can specify that as response headers MIME type. Okay. All right, so I'm going to send that, and then that means the content type should actually be application slash not dash JSON, it should be slash JSON dash line. So unfortunately, once again, there's no standard for this streaming of JSON lines. So there's actually not a standard content type. Application/JSON lines is one of the ones people use. I've also seen like application/ND-JSON. Yeah, there's a variety of line types that people use, but we have been using application/JSON lines, and hopefully eventually this will be standardized. The idea of streaming new line delimited JSON using transfer encoding chunked. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and try it again. I'll just write sup. Okay, we got an error, response, validation error. All right, so we're having another error with response validation. So let's go ahead and look at that issue. How can we add text eventually to the accept/content type headers? So we're getting, so we're required that the header adds it. Okay. So why are we getting this response headers validation error? Let's see, maybe we can see it in here. So is if the status equals status code. Validate response. So I'm just trying to see what code leads to if status equals status code. Okay, so we start off headers. And then if why this seems like a good thing. If status, so status is coming from here. And then here. Okay. I don't understand why that is airing out. Let's see if anyone's talked about that before. As you can see, my usual approach is just to see, has anyone discussed this before? It's a little tricky with Quart-Schema because this hasn't been used that often. So here we can see, oh, okay. Okay, so this actually, oh, this might be what we're getting. An exception is raised when using the validate response decorator with a header class argument set to a class inherits from a pedantic base model. And that's actually, this could be related to what we're doing because I said list of chat completion chunk, and that is actually inheriting from base model. So, let's see. But then that got fixed. So maybe that's not the issue. What else do they do here? Content type equals field. It is content type. Okay. And huh. All right. So what is this even? So it's not going to render. Let's see if we go to the docs. Then we get the subclass arg1 must be a check. Okay, so it doesn't like, this one also doesn't like the, okay, is subclass arg1 must be a class. All right, so it doesn't like something here. Is subclass model class base model. So I'm guessing that has to do with this. Like if I comment this out, it's probably gonna be okay. Find out. And hello those, hi in the chat. So Chris, that's great. Oh wait, let me practice show. Chris got invited to give a talk at a local university. Now they won't be able to stop working on the repo. That's great. I have to admit, I'm pretty addicted to these repos as well. They're really fun to work on. I have to like pull myself away. because they're really interesting, because we're like, working with pretty, pretty new stuff here, and, doing things that, haven't necessarily been done before. And then we also have another comment, and it said, thank you for the videos. You're welcome. I don't know if this one's going to end up being helpful, because we're not able to get it to do anything yet. Okay, well, we did validate the request, but not so good on the response, right? Yeah, so it works fine. So the tricky thing is just this response. So that's, yeah, I think I'm going to have to talk with, maybe file a issue to figure out how we can do that. All right. Well, I'm going to punt on the response and then move over to the other repo. And let me see where am I? Am I in main? Main would be a good place to be. Okay, I'm in main. And I will clear out this. That was just experiment. Okay. So let's do the same thing, at least for the request. The request should be more straightforward, and this one will be more interesting because the request is more complex. So what I'm going to do is in requirements, I'm going to add Quart-Schema to the requirements. Okay, and then I need to do my pip compile. So let's go ahead and pip compile the requirements. And we'll just check it to make sure that it has the Quart-Schema in it once it's done compiling. So we'll take a look and see what the requirements of text look like. So we got our pi humps again. There's a pi humps and there's Quart-Schema. All right. Oh, and we should say specifically we want the pedantic one. That shouldn't change the compilation very much. It'll just add that pedantic is also going to come from Quart-Schema. Because remember that OpenAI also has a dependency on pedantic, and we are already bringing in OpenAI. Should be somewhere here. Okay, so then we go ahead and check and see now pedantic is also coming via Quart-Schema. All right, so good. And then we're going to go up here and we're going to, import our stuff. So let's take a look at what we did here in our Quart-Schema. Okay, we're going to bring in that. We're also going to bring in this. Okay, and we're just going to work on the request validation. And let me go ahead and update my environment so that it knows about Quart-Schema, so that I get rid of those squigglies. And this one, first thing we need to do is as soon as we make the app, we're going to wrap it in Quart-Schema. So now it's wrapped in there. And then the next thing we do is we start validating requests. So we can, which one should we start with? We can start with the ask or chat. I guess we'll just do chat since that's our favorite route /chat. All right. So we're going to do @validate request. And let's remember what it looked like. So we did @validate request and we gave it the data class. So then we're going to say chat request. And I need to make that data class exist. So @data class chat request. And yeah, this one is actually, I've got Copilot on. That's why so much autocomplete is happening. So this one does take in quite a lot more. And this one I have actually tried to document on a protocol page. So AI chat app protocol. If we go here, here's the protocol. So I did document it, but I really feel like I should have an actual formal schema besides just this documentation. But we can see here that this is what the request looks like. So we've got messages, which is a list of dictionaries that has content and role. We've got stream, context, and session state. And we also somewhat have it documented in the TypeScript. So if we take a look at the TypeScript, we can actually see a lot of this is documented in TypeScript, right? But of course, TypeScript is not the same thing as Python. And so we're going to have to kind of document it in two places. Okay, so there we have messages is a list, string. We could make this more specific, and we'll say like to do use the OpenAI message types because they have their own types there. So we should be able to actually use that because we try to do as many things matching the OpenAI SDK as possible because it's basically become like a de facto SDK that you can use with other models, like more open models like Mistral and Lava and stuff. Okay, stream context, and we could be more specific with that context. So we could make that a data class chat request context. And that one would be like semantic ring here. Yeah. See how much it can remember of okay. Let's see. Can we get it to retrieval? I'm just gonna see. Can I tell Copilot? Turn this into a Python data class. Here we go. Oh my God, no. Actually, that might be kind of right. Oh yeah, because they were just making an enum out of that. That's fair. Okay. So yeah, it basically did make some kind of enums here. That's why we have. Okay, so I'll accept that. That's fine. And yeah, we do need the import too. Okay, so what did we end up getting is all this stuff. So I'm just gonna use this. So retrieval mode is those are enums. So I'll just change these to strings right now. And PP for input. I don't even remember what that is. PP for input. That's also a string. Okay. So these should really be like an enum of strings. And same thing with vector fields. That's another enum. Okay. All right. So now this is really the overrides. And I want to say overrides. Okay. And since we haven't defined it yet, I just put it in quotes and it'll be defined right underneath it. So that'll work. Okay, so we have the chat requests, the context. Now I have a field for it. So once again, I need to put this in quotes. The data class comes afterwards. And all right. Yeah, and session state is just a dictionary. It's not particularly typed. Okay, let's try that out. Oh, and then that does mean that once we add that here, then it's going to come into this route. And I don't know what order it's going to come in because we have another decorator here that's passing in the auth claims. And I don't actually know what order they're going to come in. It probably depends which order I've, ordered these decorators. So let's see. We'll find out if that's going to be correct. Okay, so now I'm going to start the server. And while it's starting, I'll just, let's see, take a look. It's always good to just read the documentation while you're waiting for stuff to start. Let's see. So we were wondering, oh yeah, like pedantic, how do we do like a Python data class string enum? Data classes. enum. No, they don't talk about enum specifically. Maybe they don't think of it as new. Yeah, I was thinking like this. Python. Well, an enum is also okay. So I don't necessarily. Maybe I'm not looking for an enum. I'm looking for limiting it to a particular set of strings. That is what I want. So I just think I need more examples. So I could maybe look at pedantic, or I could even look at Fast API since they have lots of examples. So we have, let's see, so that one is a datetime and a tuple. Let's see, there's a name. So I'm looking for example where it's like a string that could be one of several values. Examples. I just want to look at lots of examples because I haven't used pedantic or data classes very much. Oh, this only has a single example. This page is a work in progress. All right, that's fair. Let's see. So we've got, and this is the reference. Okay. Concepts, maybe concepts. So data classes. And let's see, this one is a list of integers, optional integers, integer, href, any URL. Oh, interesting. Okay. Generic data classes. That's what I don't want to config. Just looking for an example. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, John suggests looking on GitHub. I do that constantly too. I am such a GitHub searcher. You don't know. Like my whole everything is based off what I find in GitHub. But I'm not really used to streaming when I code, so it's I'm actually a little thrown off by it. But let's see. So what we see is it says class dict for field session state is not allowed. Use default factory. Okay, and this actually came from Python, so that's interesting. So session state. So here, and it says use default factory. What does that mean? All right, we'll just try seeing if Copilot understands that. I wonder if it's the equal. Okay, this error is when you try to use a mutable object like a dictionary list as a default value for a field in a data class in Python. Mutable objects can have their content change. Oh, of course. Okay. Yeah, so I remember actually teaching this. It's a very bad idea to use a mutable object as your default value. That's very fair. So instead, we have this default factory function that we could use. So we can say dict equals field default factory equals dict. Okay, and that makes sure that it's actually giving a new one each call. Okay, all right, that's cool. So we'll change that here. Field, and that comes from data classes. So it'd be data classes field. I guess this would actually be data classes data class. Although it didn't whine about that. Did I import it elsewhere? Data classes, import data class and field. Okay. So there we go. All right. So that it should be happy about. Okay. So let's see. John says I froze. Hopefully not. I am trying to stream on, I picked the high definition option, which it says you're supposed to have a wired connection for that. And I don't actually have a wired connection right now. I need to buy a very large cord, and then I need to like punch some holes in walls, which I can totally do. I probably should do. Then I have to figure out how to, I don't even have a way to plug it into this Mac. Then I have to get another adapter because Macs love adapters. But I should probably do that because it's always best to use a wired connection. So I'll probably, right now it's doing the slow way of starting this app where it's actually building the front end first, which is completely unnecessary because the front end's already built. So I'll just go ahead and stop that. And instead I will use the VS Code run and debug because that one just goes straight to running the Quart application. So let's go ahead and try that out. And then that's also great for debugging. So I'm going to do the run and debug. We shouldn't need a virtual environment. Okay. And then, same thing. All right. So we have the same issue. And this is cool. Look, it actually popped open the error from the Python code itself, which is pretty neat. That's probably because, let's look at my launch.json. What does it say? Just my code false. That's because I love looking inside other people's code, but I probably should send this to true so that I'm not digging too deep into other code. But it's a good thing to like mess with. Okay, so then so let's go ahead and see. So vector fields. Okay, this is another instance where I was assigning the default to immutable, so that's bad. And I'm just seeing if there's any other ones. And I don't see any other ones. Okay, so we're going to run this again using the run and debug. Okay, so the good news is that we got past the first stage of just getting it up and running. And so now got it open here. And okay, that's running. So then I should now have a /docs. I do. Oh my gosh. Look at that. Now, what do you think? Should I have all of these routes on here or just, the API routes, right? Because you see we've got like all the ones that serve up the static stuff like favicon, static, content, etc. It feels like I should only have the ones that are kind of API. Okay, and then there's some schemas, which is cool. Okay. All right, so then I can expand chat and we see example. So let's try that out. Okay, so we definitely want to get more specific with messages because this is not a very good message list, because what it should be is actually something like role user content haiku about cats. All right, and then it's giving me a little squiggly. Oh, just because of spell check. I don't spell check my APIs. Silly browser. Okay. So now we've got a 500 error. Sweet. That's what I like to see. Chat. Oh, so this is the error we had before where now that I'm bringing in the the request data that way, then I need to actually, so it said chat got an unexpected keyword argument data. So maybe it just always, oh, look, it just always, we can actually see in Quart-Schema, it will always pass in the data as the data argument. Okay. So I didn't really appreciate that that's how it works because we saw all the examples said data. That makes sense. All right. So then it's actually going to be data because it's always going to pass it in. We can see it here that it's always going to pass it in. And then, and now I can go in here. And I shouldn't have to do the request.json anymore. That can go away. And instead, I'm going to do like context equals data dot context. And I guess, yeah, before I did this dot get and I defaulted to a dict. This time I could do this or thing. Let's see, what is our context default to? So it says context optional. Can I do like a default factory with my own stuff? Field. The default factory. Default factory is a zero argument function called to initialize a field's value. Interesting. Okay. All right, we'll do that for now, but so then that takes care of that. And now it's interesting because I add the auth claims to the context. So I'm going to have to make that a, then I start, this is the problem is I start messing with things. So then I'd have to say auth claims. and add it there so that I could then say off claims. Put it here. Even though I don't really want them to pass it in that way. Oh, I have to think. See, as soon as you start doing this, it starts like making you question whether any of your designs were good. Okay, so then we do, so we need to change all these things now because we're not dealing with a dict anymore. So here we go. And then we have, so that's fine. We need to get the messages. So data.messages. And whether we're streaming, data.stream, and that defaults to false, so we don't have to worry about the default there. I think I can just make better defaults for some of these things. And then data.session state. And what does that default to? Yeah, it doesn't default anything. That's fine. Oh, right. Cool. So let's run and debug again. So how many of you actually use your, like add the docs endpoints, the open API endpoints, and use that for your development to help you mess with your apps? Okay, let's see. Mute. Error. Fine. It says chat got an unexpected keyword argument data. Didn't we just change that data chat request? Let's just make sure. So chat data. Okay. That might have been the old error. Let's find out. Okay, running, execute, 500. Still getting that chat got an unexpected keyword argument data. Wonder if we should, does Quart-Schema talk about what is the right order for your decorators? Let's see. I wonder what they say about WebSocket validation. Because WebSocket, we're not doing WebSockets, but WebSockets is kind of, similarly like a different kind of HTTP communication mechanism. So I was curious to see what they said. So, okay. All right. Let's see. So just looking for examples where, if they have any other examples with multiple decorators. That one, all right, let's just see if we put it last, is that going to end up working better for us? We can also try, I'll just comment this one out for now, just so we remove that as something that could be causing issues. John votes for auth first. Okay, so we'll comment it out first just to see if that's actually what's causing the weirdness. Okay, so chat is missing one required positional argument auth claims. Well, that's fair. All right, we'll add it back and see if we end up, what error we end up with next. I could also take a look at the code for authenticated to see if it's assuming stuff that it shouldn't assume. And then here we go. Okay, great. All right, so John, let's show John. John, you're right. Auth first. There we go. Yeah, another good comment from John was using Quart today. They really lack on the examples. That's true. It doesn't have a big community yet. I mean, generally the palettes community is actually pretty small. Please do, John, join our Discord, the palettes Discord. I say our Discord because I work on Flask SQL Alchemy sometimes, and there's actually a discussion happening about Flask SQL Alchemy just today. So yeah, we could use more folks in the community. So join the Discord and send PRs if you have some improvements to the docs. Keep in mind that there's not a lot of maintainers for this. For Quart, it's PG Jones is potentially the only maintainer. So always keep that in mind, is that it can take time for things to get merged. But I do think it could use more examples and more community love. It's interesting because Fast API is so popular, and I love Fast API, but Quart can do a lot of what, can pretty much do like all the things Fast API can do, or maybe quite a lot of it, like we're seeing here. But the nice thing about Quart is that if it's based on Flask, so if you're porting an existing Flask app to support asynchronous calls, then Quart might be easier to port to than Fast API, because you're already using all the Flask stuff. So I think I'm always surprised that we're not seeing more movement around Quart, but also it could just be that we need to rename Quart to Flask Async, or maybe just the next version of Flask should just be Quart, because maybe we should all be moving towards always using asynchronous frameworks, because there's so many situations where you really do want to be using asynchronous framework, right? So I don't know. I think we're hoping there's going to be a FlaskCon at PyCon this year. So if you are going to PyCon, I'm actually not going in person, but if you're in person, maybe hopefully there'll be a little mini FlaskCon if it gets approved. We're still waiting to find out. All right, so this was just an error because I treated context as a dictionary, and it is not a dictionary. Okay, so that's interesting. So in here, I'm treating it as a dictionary. So maybe what I could do is, because the other thing I could do is simply turn it into a dictionary at some point, and then I actually wouldn't even, need all this stuff. So it could just be like, convert to dict, right? Context equals. Oh, cool. There's an add dict. Okay. I didn't know that. All right, let's see if that's actually true. So import data classes as dict, and let's go as dict. I mean, it would make sense. A very common thing to do. Oh, of course, I'm already using it. Okay. Oh, that awkward moment where you realize you're already using something that you claim you didn't know about. Okay. So I'm just gonna, so that means actually I'm just gonna go ahead and revert my claim, my changes for this. So I'll just go ahead and look at this, open it up in a little source control-y thing. And actually I'll change the entire, okay, I just changed context. Okay, so we'll change context is going to be a dict. So we'll keep that as a dict. That's all fine. Okay, so that's it. And then here we go. Data classes as dict. And then dict. All right. How about this? All right. So there I've turned context into a dict. And so that when it gets passed to here, at this point, messages will be a list of dictionaries, string will be a Boolean, session will be that, and context will be dict. Okay. I think that looks good. I do, of course, have unit tests that I could run at some point, but they might need some modification with these changes. We'll see. All right, so running, and we're gonna go here too, and let's see, execute. And here we go. We got an attribute error. That's fine. So that is here, context.get. None type object has no attribute get. So we did context.get overrides. Now, okay, we're in debugging mode, so screw that. We're just going to add a breakpoint. Hello. All right, so we'll just add a breakpoint, do this proper. Oh, and I think John was asking where to get, where to join the Discord. So we have, if you go to the Flask homepage, you can find the chat link. Oh, let's see if I can even just put it in the chat. since this is my stream. Oh, I get to post URLs. It's so nice to get to post URLs. Normally I'm on other people's streams and I don't get to post URLs. Okay. So, okay, great. So we're running and then I'm going to click execute. And that brings me back into VS Code. And now I can just go like this. And, oh no, it went too fast. But okay, let's take a look. So context overrides. Oh, okay. It's setting overrides equal to none. All right. So context.get overrides defaulting to none. So then, all right, I see. All right, so let's take a look at this. So we said overrides defaults to none. Actually, I'm going to default this to the, that's interesting. Can I do this? I want to see if I can do this. It'd be cool if I could do this. But then even that default factory, is this going to work? I don't know. It'll be cool if it does, though. Let's see. All right, we're restarting. Okay, so it says this time we've got invalid schema. Input should be callable. Okay, oh, so that was my attempt at doing default factory with the name of the class, and it said it needs to be a callable, so it's fair. I feel like there might be some way of doing that, but we'll just do default factory dict, so that if it's not specified, it just comes as a dict. This doesn't feel correct exactly, so I need to do some more research to figure out really you know, how to do, because what I've got is like, you know, JSON inside JSON, you know, dicts inside dicts inside dicts, and I'm trying to figure out like what should be the defaults for them so that I can safely, you know, .get out of them and if they exist. So let's execute that. All right, and then what we see this time, okay, so this time we do see, oh, I need to make that like bigger. We see that overrides is a dictionary. So I think that this should be okay because you can say dictionary.get, and if it's not there, it's going to be false. And so now use GPT-4v is false, which is correct. So it's going to use the normal approach without vision, and then it's going to go into here and run. Let's see if we get an error inside here. It is posting. All right. And oh, these were just other breakpoints I had from some debugging I was doing this morning on something else. Okay. I think that worked. It did work. Cool. All right. Progress. So now we've got back the response. And I'm going to reload this docs page to see what it looks like now with chat. So we can see the chat. It says context messages. Okay. So that one I do want to improve. So maybe we could work on improving this to see if we can bring in that the OpenAI types. So let's go ahead and look at those types again. So we've got chat and message. Chat completion message, I think, is the one we want. Yeah, this is the one there. You can see it has content, it has role. The thing is, we really only want the front end to send content and role. The front end shouldn't really be sending these ones or these ones. So maybe we should just define our own thing like that. So we'll go here and say, let's go here and say, so instead of just a generic dict string, I want it to be a data class, and it's just going to be, we'll call it the chat request message, and role. What is literal? Literal. Typing extensions literal. Copilot explain. Oh, I didn't want literal's not defined, but is using it it has a literal or specific value. Okay, so sometimes, but we could have different things. So it could be either It could be a couple different things. So it could be user or assistant. If we're sending in like the history, like for example, let me go to the actual app, right? And then open up the network request and say, what about CTO? Okay. So then when we look at the requests that go out, what we see is, you can see here, we've got content, role user, content, role assistant, content, role user. So for us, it's got to have content, and then the role needs to be either user or assistant. And it's always also in this order, but I'm not going to enforce that here. So I do, once again, need to figure out the right way to do an enum. Okay, maybe just ask, how do I say in a data class that a string field could be one of two values? Let's see how Copilot does. Oh, I can use the literal type. That's the one I just removed. Oh, you can give a list. Is that it? Oh, that's cool. Okay. Is that really how easy it is? Okay, literal, and then user assistant. Okay, and then I won't do it. I won't give it a default value. And I don't think content should be optional. I think it should actually be required in this case. Okay. And from typing import, it's interesting that so Copilot says it's from the typing module, but in OpenAI, it's actually in the, it's in, where's the OpenAI one? There they have it from the typing extensions module. So let's just look up the typing module. And what we see, let's see, the literal, let's look at the docs. Okay, so there's the PEP, literal string, literal. Oh, look, there's the example. So type mode equals literal to one of the provided literals. Okay. Okay, so it does seem to be in the typing module, new in version 3.8. So maybe it was in typing extensions before then. All right, so we got literal. Okay, so that's our chat request message. So now what I'm going to do instead is a chat request message. And I need to put this in quotes since it's defined later on. And this one, they should always specify something. So it doesn't have a default value. Okay. All right, so let's see what it looks like when we should be auto reloading. So I'm hoping it'll auto reload for the docs. So where the heck is it? Okay, here we go. We're gonna look at chat. And it says, oh wait, we're not in auto reload because we're using the debugger. Okay. Let me, yeah, when I'm debugging, I don't have the auto reload turned on. Okay, I like this better. So look, now we see the example value says content and role. All right, so that's a lot better, because then if I'm mess this up and I said something else, then we would get back hopefully a 400. Yeah, you get back a 400. All right, so we have content in haiku about cat, role user, then I send, and I'm going to remove that breakpoint and then go forward. And now, now we've got the issue where I'm now sending in this data class chat request message into the run thing. So, but run thinks it's just gonna be a dict. So what we could do is, once again, I think we could just as dict it. So we could do data classes. The other thing is I could just, change all my code to accept these data classes, and that might be a nicer thing to do. But that's, more work. So as dict and return the new dictionary. I don't know if it's going to work because we're running this on a list, not actually on a data class. So if this doesn't work, then I'll just do a list comprehension. But I'm kind of hoping that it will work. So let's give that a go. I could also, while it's running, I'm going to go ahead and look at the documentation for asdict, which would be in the data class documentation. So data class is Python. Asdict. Okay. Example of using asdict on, okay, converted asdict P. And what about this one? C equals, okay, there we have a list of C, list asdict C. Well, this was certainly able to convert something that we could just go ahead and like turn the entire thing that we got back to into an asdict at the very beginning of that chat function. And that would also mean just less code change overall. That might be the thing to do it. Like, it feels like we should either change it to addict immediately or use it as data classes all throughout the code. And I'm not really sure which one to do right now. Okay, so we got, yeah, as I wondered about, it says addict should be called on a data on a data class instance. So what we could do is set the whole request dict. We'll just do data classes as dict data, and then we could go through and find those changes we made before and revert them back. So this one, okay, so we got, okay, I called it request JSON. All right, so we're gonna go, I'll just bring that back, bring that back, bring that back. Okay, and then go here and say, instead of that, it's going to be data classes.asdict data. Okay, so this is going to take that whole chat request, turn it into a dict, and then we get the request JSON, and now everything else should be the same as it was before. So that's one approach. The other approach is to change all my code to use data classes, and I really cannot decide. What do you think? The thing is that this is going to be PR, for others to review. And I often try to do like the smaller change unless I know for sure we want the bigger change. Especially because other people are going to be like trying to merge in these changes into their own stuff. And I also want there to be a benefit to it. So I don't know so far, like if we have, do we have a big benefit to it? So we have none-type object does not support item assignment. Okay, so what happened here is that context came in as null. So to be fair, our front end never sends context as null. So I think I need to change context. Like context shouldn't be sent as null. If anything, it could be, I guess it could be an empty dict. So now that I have, this, I could add a lot more tests to see what should be okay. Okay, so that worked. All right, so what we have now, we've got the response here. So that's cool. It's nice being able to scroll through all this stuff here. And in this case, I'm doing stream false, which I have a chance of being able to actually validate the response, because stream false is just doing your, straightforward JSON response. The problem is that if stream is true, you get a vastly different response. So I'd have to have like a different validator for when the response is streaming versus when it's not streaming. So I really have to figure out what is going to be the right approach for validating the response, right? So I think I would need to do validate response, different validator for stream equals true versus false. And not sure that we can actually validate a streaming based on lines response. Okay, now I'm going to put that to do here. So put it closer. Okay. But the cool thing is, okay, now that I did the chat one, now I could go to /ask. And this one actually takes basically the same parameters. So we could go ahead and validate this one. So how did we do it with validate request? All right, so we should probably just move. What I could do is like put, maybe put all of these in. I could put all these inside of a separate file because this file is getting pretty long, right? So you can imagine maybe having my types file could be what we do, right? So let's just do a new file, types.py. And it's going to go in here. And then putting it all in there. And it is missing a lot of imports. So we'll just let Copilot do its thing. Copilot loves figuring out what needs to be imported. That's like its favorite thing. I think we got it all. I don't see any squigglies. No squigglies. Okay. So now we can go ahead and remove those and then go up here and we're going to do some imports here. So we're going to do from types, import chat requests. Okay, we'll just import all those and see what we end up needing. Looks like we actually only need the request. Okay. So now let's go here and validate request. And we brought in the data. And then we're going to bring in the data chat request. And then we decided what we do is we go here and say as data. And then the rest is the same. So you might wonder, like, why do we have two different routes? Well, the ask is single turn. So there is actually a slight restriction here in that we would only ever expect to get a single thing in the message thing. So I could maybe slightly modify the ask request to say, I think in models that in the TypeScript, I don't think we really distinguish. I think we basically, yeah, we just use the same thing. So it really should just be like chat app request or something. I don't know. Chat request is maybe a misnomer because it's used for both ask and chat. All right, so wait, possibly restrict messages to single length. That'd be like a custom validator, or an inherited type. Okay, so now we've got that. All right, so let's go ahead and run that. And then we also want to look into how we can exclude things from our OpenAPI stuff because we decided we don't want static. That feels weird, and assets would be really similar. And slash is going to give you back an HTML, right? So this gives HTML, this gives back like HTML or JavaScript. Same with this one. Slash redirect is used by login, so it'd be really weird to have it here. So the question is, like, do you expect to see every route here, or do you expect to only see the ones that serve back, some sort of data-like thing, right? Because this one serves back content, and I don't even know how that would end up getting rendered by the documentation renderer. Okay, so let's see. Oh, okay, cannot import chat requests from types. Oh, do I have like two types? Types. Where did I put types? Types.py. Didn't that seem right from types? Let's make sure everything's in the right place. Types. Import chat request. Am I allowed to call it types? I think I'm allowed to call it types. Oh no! Look, it's trying to import it from Python 3.11 /types. All right, I've decided I'm not going to call it types. So we'll call it data classes. No, that's also the name of the module. uh, API types. Sounds good. API types. All right. Naming is hard, everyone. Naming. Everybody names everything the same today. Chat types. Yeah. Yeah, it's just chat. My thing about chat is that we kind of overuse it because we have this /chat route, but we also call the whole thing a chat app. I'll show the ask route, right? So the route we're testing now is this one, ask a question. Let me reload this. Okay, ask. So I click on this one, and oh, now I'm getting an error. I don't know what that one is, but this would be a single turn question. Okay, let's try it in the actual in here. Okay, so here we have ask, and so we can see now that ask got the same schema, and we can try it out and say, what does a PM do? I'm going to execute, and we got an error, and he received none type object. Okay, so this looks similar to what we've gotten before. So just let's see, we did. Oh, and this was just the error with context. So I need to fix this default context so that it's not null. So I could take a look and see. Let's see, where do we do the context? Yeah, default to that. So let's just change it default to an empty dictionary. And now we get back the response. So here we go. That looks really similar from before. I don't know why let's try it try this again. What? Ask your data and network. What do I have? Like, let's see. I don't know. Must be something funky with my local host there. All right. So then we've got, okay, so we've got now chat documented, ask documented. Oh, we wanted to see how we could remove some stuff from the schema. So let's see, Quart-Schema how-to guides. And let's see if we can document the API. Hiding routes. That's what I was looking for. It's just hide. Very nice. I knew there was something that was easy to do. Okay. So we go up here and we say import hide. And then we could go ahead and move this up. All right. And then we just go through here and we just happily go, we're going to hide that because no one cares. We're going to hide that. We're going to hide that because that's a static asset. This one, I'm kind of torn. Let me see. Okay, let's see. Can we, my friend in this not, all right, let me restart the server with the more typical command. See if we can get it going. It would be interesting to me to see what this content one renders like in the browser, if we can get it to work, because it would render back like a binary file. I don't know how that's going to work. So let's see. So then we've got, we're definitely going to show ask. We're going to show chat. Auth setup is an interesting one. I think we'll leave that there because it is returning back JSON. And if something's returning back JSON, that seems useful. Same thing with /config. That one should be a pretty easy one to document because you can see it right there. I don't love that it's camel case, but these things happen. And then this one is not really a route. This is a lifespan event that happens as your app is starting up. So that's the end of our routes. Okay, so we've hidden all the ones that don't return JSON, and although we did keep the content one to see how that's gonna look. Let's see. Just doing our little front end build. I need to improve my local debugging. All right, let's see what else what other documentation can we look at? So we looked at the data classes, typing module, Quart-Schema. So we've done hiding. we don't need to deprecate anything, fortunately. You can document without validate. So that's kind of interesting. I wonder, I might end up using that actually. Because the thing is, I am a little worried about doing the validation because if somebody wanted to like connect a front end to this back end that passed in some other parameters, it would be kind of good for the back end to just ignore them because we're trying to have these like flexible front ends and back ends in a way. So we both want to like share a common protocol, but also have some flexibility. So I may end up actually saying, you know, changing the validate to document so that we get that, you know, because what I really want is just this. I'm trying to get at this OpenAPI.json schema. So I can just say, hey, this is the schema and this is what you should adhere to. And then I found this, there's like this OpenAPI diff thing. Yeah. Because then you can imagine doing a diff between one chat app, like one AI chat app and another AI chat app and seeing how different they are. I don't know how well it's going to work if you can really diff two OpenAPI schemas, but that's the dream. All right, so we've got it loaded now. And let's see. Now it's just not working very well. So auth refresh and 400. So we're getting back a validation error. So we must be sending something it doesn't like. So we should change this to document. All right, so we said validate. And so instead we can say document request. And then the other one would also be document request. And so then I can figure out like debug what's wrong with, you know, what is the front end not like. And then here we can add in document request. Let's see, it says document request is not defined. Oh, just because I imported it too late. All right, that's fine. So we're gonna go ahead and start it. Document request. Okay. Looks good. And then we should only be still giving back. Oh, now it's giving back a 500. Well, that's good. Oh, now it's missing. Oh, that's interesting. But now it's not getting the data argument. Okay. That's fair. All right. So if you only document it, then you don't get the data document, the data parameter. Tricky. All right. So let's change it back to validate and see. Let me retry this. So what's the error? No, it's the same. Oh, because we're not in reload. Oh, now we're just going to get into just comedies of errors. Okay. Boop. Okay, so we can do, so that's just reloading right now. What else can we do? Headers validation. Operating IDs, that's interesting. Query string. I'm not using any query strings in this one. Request validation. Form data. I'm not using form data. And I'm not using file data right now, but we might eventually if we add file upload. And then response validation. And we did try that a bit in the other one, but it was a bit tricky. Okay, so I feel like it's not going to work. Yeah. Okay, so we got a bad request. And why did we get a bad request? Tell me why. It just says that, okay, so we're just getting the bad request. Let's take a look at the payload. So what we could do actually is, can we do view source? Yeah. So I want to like copy this, copy, and then go to the docs, it's localhost /docs, and just try it in the docs, right? Oh, look at that. Now we can see the whole overrides. All right, I'm going to try it out and send this in here. Ignore all that spell check stuff. And it says that it sent a request the server cannot understand. But then it doesn't tell us what was wrong with it. So that might be a reason to prefer Fast API, because I know Fast API gives you really specific errors about what is wrong with it. And we can like just look at it and see, but I really want more information about what's wrong. So let's see, can we do handling validations errors? So I want to know what actually is. Okay, all right. So here's what we can do. We're gonna say error validation. No, I want to know exactly what the error was. Thank you. Okay, pedantic validation. Okay, this is what we need. All right, we're gonna add this in. So let's see. I'm gonna move this up here. And request scheme validation error. All right. Get back an error. I usually turn like that. And let's see, VP.error handler. So we're using blueprints. And I think we should have to do usually we have to do JSONify. I wonder if that's an error in the doc. Okay. So I'm just trying to make it look a bit like my other errors. So I usually do an error key and then the code. All right. So now it should be that when it gets that request schema validation error, it calls this. Let's see if that actually happens. Okay. All right, it's running. And we go here, we execute. Yay! Okay. So one validation error for chat request session state. Input should be a valid dictionary. Oh, okay. What did I put for session state? Session state we actually don't use. So yeah, it's just null here. So that one actually I should set to that it can be null. That's funny because the other one, we had it like switched which one should be null. Okay, so we're going to say this one can be none. And that's optional. All right, cool. It is much nicer having those validation errors. All right, so that's maybe a point for Fast API. Not that this is a competition, but it is nice that out of the box that you get those validation errors with Fast API. I think that's a good default. But once again, this is Quart-Schema, which is trying to add on top of a Quart app, which is like really like a Flask app. So it's trying not to do too much. So it makes sense that you have to customize it. All right, so this time, session state, chat request session state. I said that it can be none now. The other thing I can do, of course, is just change it to not be none in my request, but it should be fine with none now. We said, oh, we didn't say it was optional. But we got, but that's okay. So it's the same dict string equals none. Oh, that's a weird thing to say. Okay, optional. Maybe it should be this. Optional dict string. Probably this. Okay. So it's optional and has a default value of none. So if we're saying optional, that implies it can be none. So that should work. If we're saying it's optional, that implies it can be none. None is a weird thing. Okay, let's try this out. Okay, here we go. Can't parse JSON, fine. Oh, probably because I have stream true. Yeah, so this is what you'll get when you try to do when you try to show streaming JSON, is that this documentation renderer kind of gives up a little bit, but it still actually looks pretty good. So even though it claims it can't parse the JSON, it did, right? Because look at this, it's at least, sorry, it can't parse the JSON, but the syntax highlighter is doing a great job, because that looks like streamed JSON lines to me. So that's why I'm okay with using this to display stream JSON lines, even though there's technically no formal support for it. because it actually does it looks okay. So the first chunks, these are all chat completion chunks. The first chunks have like the context, that's why they're so big. And then the rest of the chunks only have a token at a time. So they're quite small. You can see product manager is responsible for leading the product management team, the comma. We can change this to stream false. And then it's going to be, more readable. And now actually our front end should work. Okay, so that's our stream equals false, which works really nicely. All right, so let's see. Are you going to work for me now? Come on. You better work. There we go. Okay, so here we've got the chat tab. And I wanted to show the ask tab to show the difference here where when we do ask. So this time we're getting a type error. Normalize argument to must be string, not none. Okay, so maybe we're running into an issue with the message, that message thing, where it's saying there is a difference between the messages. So I'll take a look into that. I'm gonna call it now because I've been streaming for a while and probably have some other stuff to do now. I have to judge some hacks is what I need to do, is judge hacks from our hack together. Should be fun. But there you go. So we managed to do some request validation. We haven't managed to do response validation yet. It's going to be a little tricky for the stream and response. I will dig into that off stream. Okay. Thanks everyone for the comments and questions and helpers. Bye.